Hello and welcome everyone.
We're live.
We are live.
Awesome.
Welcome to TipJar. We have attendees trickling in. As people join, I just want to remind you of the Q&A and chat features that we have available. I'm going to just verify chat's working. Um, so we'll do a quick test. Make sure everyone is good. I'm going to go ahead. Okay, it should be enabled now. So if you guys want to chat in, tell us where you're from, tell us what you want to get out of this API focused webinar. Love to see that. There's also Q&A, so test that as well. We will have Q&A at the very end, and if there are questions relevant throughout the session, we'll be happy to answer them if appropriate, or if not, we'll reserve them for the very end. And any question you ask, we'll be following up with you afterwards if we don't answer it to your satisfaction. So glad you all could be here today. My name is Dylan Sellers. I'm the head of customer success here at ObservePoint, and I'm joined by Nick Suter, Senior Technical Success Manager. Some of you may work with Nick on a regular basis. And I'm thrilled to introduce the topic of top uses of the ObservePoint API, or top use cases. And we just came off the high of attending our Edge event last month, where we had in the US, we had a kind of an open choose your own adventure session. And the most popular topic was leveraging the ObservePoint API. And there was significant demand for that topic. And so we wanted to bring back this topic to TipJar and make sure that we cover the fundamentals and keep this broad enough so that it's valuable for our customers. You may remember that I posted a session on the API um, earlier this year, or maybe it was last year. Time is flying. But we talked about it was a two-part series about the basics of the API and also how to do an API BI integration. So how to get data from ObservePoint into Tableau or Power BI or Domo to build impressive dashboards and share the data. And so that was a pretty niche approach to like our application of the API. And today we're going to talk more about more broad use cases, and Nick is going to demo some awesome stuff today. So without further ado, we'll get to the full agenda here. So we'll do a quick recap of our last tip jar, as we always do. And then Nick is going to step us through what is an API use cases, getting started with ObservePoint's API, and understanding some of the nuance or some of the specifics that you need to understand about our API so you can get up and running faster. And then we'll do a hands-on exercise with the API, and Nick will demo some cool applications. So let's go recap. So if you weren't here, the last session we did with TipJar was a privacy-focused session, and it was hosted by myself and Abby, and I stepped you through the playbook that we use in order to help customers implement like a world-class privacy compliance auditing solution. And it's a core component of web governance in modern times to have privacy compliance really buttoned up. And so we talked through audits and the types of audits we should set up and the cadences and the size of those audits. And then we talked also about how journeys play a role in privacy compliance and the applications of journeys in that regard. And then we also talked about standards and how we would create approved tags or approved cookie lists. And then we create alerts to deliver the automation that ObservePoint is really known for, and make it possible to distribute those insights to different teams without your organization. So if you haven't had a chance, you can go back and find that session on our website. You can find it under resources, and you can search for TipJar episodes. So if you find that valuable, or if that topic is jumps out to you, go check it out. There's also a lot of other awesome content that's free and available online. Okay, I'm going to kick it to you, Nick.
Hey, right on. Excuse me. Thanks, Dylan. So I'm going to jump right into this with a story here. Not really a story, just an analogy. I know that, again, just another probe to tune into previous API tip jars that we have hosted by Dylan. But in a previous tip jar, Dylan likened APIs to a butler. And it's similar here, but I wanted to bring in the soda shop. So if you're unfamiliar with Utah, Utah's where ObservePoint headquarters is. That's where Dylan and I are. Something that's unique to Utah is there's not a coffee shop on every corner. And you're probably wondering how we function. We still thrive off of caffeine. We just consume it via soda, unfortunately. And we see a bunch of these soda shops on the corners. And if you approach one of these soda shops for the very first time, you notice they have these like massive menu boards that outline all of the drinks that and sugars that you can consume, right? And then using this as an analogy here, right? This menu contains all those drinks and recipes. ObservePoint has done the same thing. We've provided a lot of menus for you, and I want to highlight just a couple now. I'm going to highlight some throughout the presentation here. All of them will be linked, so if you're feeling really ambitious and you want to review this deck later, you can access them there. But one of those menus we provide is a menu to endpoints. So our version 1, or version 2 and version 3 endpoints. We also provide a lot of menus through our help center, meaning guides to how to get started with ObservePoint's API. We have a recipes guide. We have a lot of really impactful, and again, articles that I'll highlight along the way. But moving back to the good old soda shop here, drinks that you would order, these sugary caffeine-packed drinks, are typically comprised of a handful of ingredients. And I like to liken these to API endpoints. These endpoints are very specific. They contain very specific data sets or ingredients. And just as you would order a drink, you can order these API endpoints. You can actually interact with them in a lot of different ways, and we'll explore those. But for example's sake, you can think of the actual ordering of the drink as an API request. And you can perform as many API requests as you like, but if you're not authenticating, you'll never get that API response. And very similarly, you can place as many orders or go through the drive-thru as many times as you'd like, but if you're not authenticating or if you're not paying, you're never actually going to get any drinks. There's a lot of other similarities between the two, meaning there's customization of these drinks. ObservePoint does provide the opportunity to provide some customization in API requests through some of the parameters we set and how the functions are set up. And we'll talk through those as well. But before we get too deep into use cases, I really want to just walk through a story, something that I recently went through. And the reason why I tell this is I want us to reflect on pain points or repetitive things that we're doing within the product, because often these can be solved with the API. And I recently, within the last couple of weeks here, met with a company to discuss privacy and compliance. And just like Dylan highlighted during a previous TipJar, there are 3 big audits we want to build out for privacy and compliance: opt-in, opt-out, and GPC enabled for every single domain. As I kind of explored this more with the customer, they said, hey, we have a couple domains. I was like, no big deal. I can go ahead and build those out for you. But as the conversation progressed, I quickly found that they had a ton of domains. And this company not only had a ton of domains, but they existed across the whole world. And what I thought was probably going to be 10 to 20 audits was going to be closer to 300, 400, 500 audits within their account. And so I kind of buckled up, set aside time during the day to knock these out. And I severely underestimated how long this would take. I easily went through an hour. I spent a few hours after work just building these out, and I felt like I barely made a dent in it. I came back, I kind of was reporting back to the team, and one of my team members mentioned, like, why are you not utilizing the API? And it was one of these, like, I've made a huge mistake moments in my life where I realized that I had just spent hours of my time building out audits within the platform that I could very easily have created via the API. And after this, I spent maybe 20 minutes configuring everything, and I was able to push maybe 300 audits in a matter of like maybe 20 minutes to the account. And I tell this story specifically because we're going to highlight some use cases here, but we also want to reflect on, again, repetitive tasks we're doing in the product, areas that maybe we if we ever notice any shortcomings or anything that we think we can solve via the API, I want you just to reflect on those as we review these possibilities with APIs. But okay, here we go. So here are the big APIs or possibilities with APIs that our customers are using currently. So bulk actions. When I think of bulk actions, these are things like what I just went through. Bulk creation of audits, bulk creation of journeys. We can do bulk edits. Think of editing rules or updating audits, editing alerts, things of that nature. We can generate custom reports. So if there is data living in multiple journeys or multiple audits, we can access all of those audits and pull data and concatenate those. I mentioned that as a solution, but I also want to remind everyone that we do have some product enhancements coming where we do have company-wide reporting, which will solve kind of this gap here. But know that this is still a possibility through the API. We can also, through triggers, like based off of a certain event outside of ObservePoint, trigger the start or the creation of an audit. Those are definitely use cases that are utilized today. Integrations, Dylan has highlighted this in the past. I'm thinking of BI software, integrating with Tableau or Domo or Power BI, something like that. If we have any ticketing systems such as Jira, we can definitely leverage those through the API, or if we have any like PM tools or some project management tools that have the ability to, or have an open API, we can integrate with those as well. And as I'm going through some of these, I'm hoping this sparks some ideas. Feel free to drop those in chat, and Dylan with his big brain can kind of tell you whether that's possible or not. And if we can't get to it right now, make sure that this is a priority during your next call with your customer success manager. They're also experts in this field. They'll be able to tell you what these possibilities are, and we have a team dedicated here to assist with kind of breaking down this as well. But jumping back to this here, unsupported features. Sometimes we release new features within the product, and we don't have an easy way to export that data. Recently we released like Web Vitals. We don't have a quick export for that. Well, let's utilize the API to pull that Web Vital data. And there's other instances where we can utilize that as well. Cross audit, cross journey alerts. We can, based off of alerts, pull data across different audits and across different journeys. There's a lot to do here. And again, populate the chat with any ideas that this sparks. And CSMs who are on the call, take note of that, because we want to make sure that this is a topic that we discuss in depth going forward. Okay, so getting started. So starting out here, I've highlighted a template script that everyone here can use. It's fairly all-encompassing, but it's definitely a plug and play. And this, I believe, is also highlighted on our help center. So if you don't want to go back to these slides, if not, you can reach out to me directly and I can get it to you. But authenticating, every ObservePoint API does require clients to authenticate. And if you're unfamiliar with this authentication process, we have an API key that's found in every account. All you have to do, assuming you're an admin here, go to your name, go to the profile, and then there'll be a screen displayed with an option to copy your API key. You can simply plug and play that into a script like this to make sure that we're authenticated appropriately. When it comes to versioning, I mentioned that we do have documentation around our versions. We have a V2 and a V3, which is unique. We utilize both of them. We have customers that utilize both versions. We don't anticipate deprecating any of those. So feel free to take a look at these Swagger links right here. And if you've interacted with Swagger before, it's a pretty, if you're familiar with APIs, it's a pretty impactful or helpful way of displaying API endpoints.
And Nick, a comment on that is, as general rule of thumb, new features and capabilities of ObservePoint will be released on V3 endpoints. But like
Cool.
we don't have any intentions of deprecating V2, so those are should be reliable and something you can use. And if should there be a change in the future, we would of course communicate very broadly and repeatedly before we deprecate anything. So they're good to use.
Sweet. Methods. We can get, put, post, and patch. So we're going to retrieve the data. We can update and replace, create, and partially update. We will have some API responses. 200 is going to be success. 400 mistakes were made somewhere, and then 500 reach out to your CSM or support. Rate limiting. I just want to call this out that we do have some limiting here. 1,000 requests within 5 minutes. There's no overages here due to the fact that we do limit this, but it's something to be aware of. That there could be some throttling there. Pagination. Some of the endpoints use some pagination. I mentioned this earlier when ordering a drink. There's some customizability there, but a lot of that customizability will be found within the function itself. But I did want to call it that some of the endpoints do require some input there. And then some of the most helpful help docs here. So if you go to our help center and you search for getting started with the ObservePoint API, it's incredible. It's a great way to just get familiar with our API. It links a lot of what is linked on these last couple of slides. Additionally, I really like the API recipes. So if we're talking best practices or common use cases, we've actually outlined how to accomplish that with the API in our API recipes documentation. And then similar to that, we have common API functions that are great for both experienced and new users who are looking to build out these functions themselves. Now, I want to get like really hands-on with the tool, and I'm kind of pulling a curveball here. I have a hunch that we have some very technical users, some people who are very familiar with the API, who are familiar with building things out with the API. But I think there's probably a subset of users who don't come from a coding background or are less familiar with the process of building out APIs. And I have tried to create a way where we tackle one of the use cases that we highlighted earlier, that both someone who's really experienced with the product can utilize, but also someone who has no coding background can also build out and execute one of these APIs for themselves. So there's a few limitations. For this example, I am using Google App Scripts. So depending on what suite we use, this may or may not be an option. Additionally, I've supplemented it with a custom GPT that I created. So there could be some limitations there depending on our company's, I guess, opinion on large language models. But I'm going to jump. Dylan, will you make sure that this jumps over to ObservePoint?
Yeah.
And it did, right?
Not yet. I haven't seen it pan over. We may need to unshare and reshare.
Yeah.
While Nick is doing that, he mentioned Google App Scripts as the example medium we're going to use to execute this script. But you can also run Python scripts on your local machine. You can run, we have customers that do that. We also have customers that build scripts using Node.js and host that in an AWS or Microsoft Azure type solution. So there are places to host the scripts to truly automate and schedule them to run on a recurring basis. And that's good practice if you want to be really advanced and technical. But a lot of you can get by with Python scripts on your local machine. So
for sure. And if what we execute today in JavaScript, we want to convert over to another language, we very well could for you, especially with the advantage of GPT. We can do that really quickly.
I see your screen, Nick.
What was that?
I see your screen. We're good.
Thank you. Cool. So I have ObservePoint open here, and I want to walk through a use case of building a custom report. And this report is accessing Web Vitals. As Web Vitals was recently introduced, we have Chrome Web Vitals here found under the Pages report. Many of us are familiar, but I'm within an audit right now. And we have our Web Vitals listed here. This is out of the single page scanned in this audit. This is the average Web Vital metrics here. Now, we don't have an easy way to export this data directly, but there are some ways that we can do this via the API. So,
And Nick, can you maximize can you zoom in your screen a little bit? You had a request to zoom in for readability.
yeah, absolutely.
Just Command plus, I think, will work.
Worried about it allowing me in the way I'm sharing.
Thanks for the feedback, Dominic.
So I'll try to zoom in. I just due to the way it's shared, it's not letting me expand it, unfortunately. But I will the parts that I'm focusing on, I'll make sure to maximize for you. But we do so jumping back real quick, we do have endpoint documentation for version 1 or version 2 and version 3. But kind of a pro tip here, you can inspect any page within ObservePoint and you can find these API endpoints or the API requests. So I have an audit open here. I'm going to zoom in so that everyone can see if it allows me. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know if I'm going to be able to zoom in for you. It's not even letting me pinch the screen here.
Try Command plus after you've focused on, like you selected this page. Does that help then?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not doing it.
Okay.
But yeah, and the recording will be available after too if we want to review this. But I just want to highlight that I've opened up the console. I've navigated over to the network tab here, and if you refresh any of these pages, and if you have everything filtered down by fetch XHR, you'll be able to see those API requests. Hang tight. I wonder if I need to. I wonder if this has been open too long. Okay, it's loading.
Nick, real fast. If you go hover at the top of your desktop, you should see the Chrome bar open. And if you select View, I think you can zoom through the View option. There you go.
Okay, there we go. Hopefully that's better.
Good call. It's good on the better on the left. The right side's still pretty small, but we might not be able to get around that. So
cool. So I'm going to reload this page one more time and we should see these network requests come through. And if we inspect these as they come through, you can see under the header section, the actual API endpoint right here. And if you navigate over to the preview, you can see that the data found within this request here. And so you can click through any and all of these requests and search for the data that you care about. So in this case, what we care about is going to be Web Vitals. Sometimes these naming conventions make it really easy to identify what we're looking for. Sometimes I find myself clicking over to this preview section, clicking back over to these names, and then arrowing down to take a peek at the data that we can see here. And having done this prior, I know that Web Vitals has this naming convention here. So I'm going to click over to it. If I expand everything here in the preview tab, I can see that this contains all of the data that I'm looking for. I'm looking to pull the cumulative layout shift, the first contentful paint, largest contentful paint, and time to first byte. Now jumping back over to this header section, I can use the information gathered here to go ahead and apply it to one of our templated scripts that I can then drop in Google Apps Scripts and return this data. Now, for users who are less familiar with the scripts or understanding code, what I've done is I've actually created a custom GPT for you that all you have to do is if you find the network request that's returning or has the data that is important to you, all you have to do is inspect or right click that network request and copy the C URL. And if you go to the GPT, it's already been configured to understand and break down this code. And it's applying the templates found on ObservePoint's Help Center. And it should initially spit out the endpoint, the version, and the method for you. And then I have a follow-up prompt here, provide an API token. This is not best practice. This is something that I'm just using for demo purposes. I don't think we should be putting any API tokens within a large language model. But for example's sake, I'm going to go ahead and navigate back over to ObservePoint. And I'm going to go ahead and click my name, go to profile. And then on this page here, I can see my API key. I will be resetting this after the call. So don't get tricky. But let me jump back over to ChatGPT here. And you can see that it's going to go ahead and create the script for you. And we can quickly drop this in Google Apps Script. And if we're looking for the Python for this, we can very easily let this GPT know that we want to convert it to a different language, and it can effectively do that. I've done less testing around that, but I have done a lot of testing around the actual Google app scripts. So we can go ahead and copy this code here. And again, this is great for a user who's less familiar with coding. But again, if you're very familiar with coding, this is, as you know, you can ask follow-up questions and get additional details directly here in this GPT that I think would be very beneficial. So having app scripts open right here, all I have to do is paste this, go ahead and hit save and execute run. And you should see in the payload here, we have the first step done where we're successfully retrieving this data. Now, really quick, I have programmed this GPT to, again, ask if we'd like a CSV export. I saw very early on that there were some questions about exports around this data. So to do this, all you'd have to do is go ahead and jump back over to ObservePoint. And if you right-click Web Vitals and you copy the response, so the data found within this API here, and paste that here along with your email. The script will be updated to export a CSV to any email added here. And I'll just demonstrate that really quickly. And then from there, there's a few additional steps we can go through.
That's awesome, Nick. I'm getting chills. And for those of you who were interested in getting the prompt for the GPT, Nick can share it after the call. I had someone request it. So if you want, we're not afraid to share the secret sauce underneath the GPT. So
takes a second to load here. But in short, it's tied into a lot of the templates that we use for ad hoc requests for customers. And it's just been trained to interpret, again, the response and the CURL to pull out the appropriate data.
Yeah, and I love how this isn't like rocket science to reproduce either. Like Nick, I think it's very thoughtful approach you have where you take the CURL and you take the response and you provide that information, and then the AI knows what to do with the rest. The large language model knows what to do with the rest. And I think that same thing could be applied using any large language model you have access to within your organization. It can handle that with just a very light prompting, I would say. So super, super cool perspective, Nick. I love it.
So this is my emails here. You can see that after that particular run, it sent me an email because that's the email I dropped in the prompt with an export of the Web Vital data. If we can get this to load here. So let me just display that here. And then if there's ever any like configuration around how we want this displayed, the GPT is configured to recognize that. So you can add any additional details around, say if we're pulling in multiple API endpoints here, and we wanted to merge the data, the prompt should be able to recognize that and associate like values between those data sets. So this approach here, this is great. The use case here again is extracting data that we can't easily export from the tool. Now, to really take this one step further, this script here is also configured to accept webhooks. So, and this is again specific to Google scripts, Google app scripts. But if you go up to this deploy section, you can go ahead and create a new deployment. Label it whatever naming convention you'd like. I have the access set to anyone, and I hit deploy here. It will actually output a URL that we can then drop within. Let's go back to that audit that we're taking a peek at. Probably don't. We'll open this back up in a second, but I was utilizing this weekly ObservePoint audit. If we navigate over to the settings and hit edit, under this first tab, test scenarios, at the very bottom, we do have a webhook. You are a complete webhook URL field here. If you drop that Google App Scripts webhook URL and hit save, now every time this audit runs, it's going to go ahead and kick off that script and therefore send you a CSV of those web vitals.
Yeah,
So,
Nick, I'll add a couple of comments. So it's important to handle the dynamics, right? And like if we wanted this to always send us the same data set, you know, we will have static values for the audit run ID. But if we want it to be dynamic, we need to modify the script to do that. And many people don't know this, but we know it by heart here at ObservePoint. But basically, when that complete webhook URL is triggered at the completion of the audit, that webhook URL, we pass three pieces of information to that URL. We pass what the item type, which is an audit or a journey. We pass the item ID, so the audit or journey ID, and we pass the run ID. And those three pieces of information can be used to effectively tell your app script to find the latest information, the information from the latest run of that audit. And that's a key piece. We have a document on that. I'm actually going to share it in the chat as well. It's a basic Google App Scripts document, but the same principle could be applied for any other webhook technology. And there's several out there. So I'm going to share that in the chat.
And I can update the prompt to account for that too, depending on use case or ask if how we want to interact with the webhook specifically. It shouldn't take long to do so if end users are interested in that. But
awesome.
But yeah, hopefully that's helpful for everyone. I'm hoping that displaying it in this manner provides a way for users who are less technical to interact with the API and to play around with it themselves. But I'm hoping that overall, users who are very familiar with, I guess, new users and users who are very familiar with the API, this sparks some ideas around what is possible. And I know we highlighted common use cases, but I urge you to look for additional use cases. Again, reflect on repetitive tasks that we're doing or repeat business asks. If we have, annual runs that we do, look at what we do during those annual audits, whatever it may be, or biannual audits, and who we're exporting this data to. Look for opportunities where possibly we can integrate with another platform, or we can have automation around either scheduling or exporting this data. There's really a lot that we can do here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll echo Nick's sentiment there. Like we're really excited to tap into new custom solutions and use cases. We've built integrations, totally custom integrations for Slack, Microsoft Teams, ServiceNow, Asana, OneTrust. We've built probably dozens of custom reports that we can pump into Google Sheets or send as Excel files to an email address. We have certain alerts that people haven't been able to accomplish within the platform today, but we were able to create those alerts because we had the data. For example, we had a customer that wanted duplicate floodlight tag alerts within journeys. And since that capability doesn't exist out of the box, we built a webhook to accomplish that. I've also had customers that wanted to run an audit a second time if it returns any failures to verify that it wasn't a blip in the website experience, that there wasn't a server error that particular time with the execution of that journey run. And so it'll basically double confirm every journey failure and run a second time. I've had customers build, dashboards, build all kinds of custom logic. So we'd love to be supportive in any efforts or any ambitions you have to do that. Nick, it looks like your video froze actually, so we're getting a good shot of your profile there.
That's right. Can you kind of see my
Um,
mullet a little bit?
yes, we can see it
Okay,
great.
good.
Um,
I'll re.
but anyway, if you have more questions, we're happy to stay on for the next couple of minutes. If you guys have questions, I had a couple of people chat with me directly. Several people did, and so I'll have follow up with you guys after. And I'll also just invite you to use this as resources, like use your technical success manager, whether that's Nick or someone else on my team. We've got a solutions architect who is dedicated to building custom solutions for customers at no cost. We don't believe in charging additional costs for these kind of one-off projects or these solutions, um, provided the scope is reasonable, and it generally is. It's rare that we ever have any request that's really out there and not accomplishable by automation. And we're really excited to build it. So please reach out and let us help you make that possible. So. I saw feedback from Jay here on the call. He said, if possible, can we see a demo of Excel integration with the API just for the authentication as a demo? Jay's trying to accomplish pulling data into Excel. We know that a lot of enterprises aren't able to use Google Sheets. So Jay, our follow-up, we'll step you through that, and if we might produce a guide or a new help doc as a result of that exercise with you, stepping through how we can work with Excel. There are some limitations with Excel. We have to use typically VBA or Python programming languages in Excel. But Microsoft is getting more as it starts to build more cloud solutions for Excel. Some of that stuff is more possible, and going to become a better user experience. So we'd love to come visit with you. And yes, let's have Nick dropped his email in the chat. So Nick, actually, could you share it with everyone? I think you shared it with hosts and panelists. Make sure to share it with everyone. Uh,
Yep.
and then share my email as well. Mine is just dylan@observepoint.com. Happy to help you guys, and would love to connect after the call. Also, find us on LinkedIn. We'd love to
Please,
connect
yeah.
and be in touch that way too. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Is there-
Thanks everyone for joining. And again, we'll stay on for just a few questions if anyone has any.
Just drop those emails for everyone. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me over LinkedIn, or you can ask Dylan or I questions directly.
All right.
Is the solution for that doc?
Well, thanks everyone for joining. Excited to hear from you soon, and let us know if you have additional questions. This will be published, and the recording will be sent after to everyone. So we'll be in touch. Thanks, everyone. Have a great
Thank you.
week.
Thank you.
Oh, and the deck will be
Yeah, I'll
available.
make sure that's included as well, just because all the links and everything are in there.
Okay. Signing off. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye.